listen to the Val and Val Show, where conversation is art. Conversation is art. Conversation is art. You should chime in. Ain't no telling what the spark on the Val and Val Show. Ain't no telling the Val and Val Show. You know, ain't no telling where we go on the Val and Val Show. Ain't no ceiling, cause the art of conversation is the flow. It's that creativity available when we speak, available in our homes, available in the streets. We just trying to get it sparking and take it a little deeper. Keep it casual while fireside chatting with our people. Yeah, we take it a little deeper. It get hot when we fireside chatting with our people. Cause conversation is art. Conversation is art. You should chime in. Ain't no telling what'll spark on the Val. The Val and Val Show. The Val and Val Show.
Whoop whoop. The Val and Val Show. That's right. My spiritual daughter, Shy Speak, did the doggone thing. How y'all doing? How y'all doing? Hope all is well. All is well with me. And look, we got a I'm going to say God ordained show, because I learned something last night watching the Democratic National Conference that fits right in. I was like, look at God line this thing up all the way. So look, I'm gonna need you all to share this. I want you to share this with anybody you you thought was like, oh, they're different, oh, they got a quirk. You're gonna learn something tonight. You're probably gonna say, that was me. That was me. But at least my daughter, which just goes up and like, yeah, mama, you probably got a little bit too. Thank God, because we didn't have none of all this science and stuff back in the day. But look, welcome to Conversation is Art. As you know, I'm your host. I'm the Val and Valerie. Okay, y'all know how it go, right? It just depends on who you get. Well, tonight you're gonna have Valerie, okay? Because this is gonna be serious business. You have Val when I need to go to the left, okay? Oh, we're gonna be a little bit to the right. So you're gonna have Valerie. So again, welcome. Please share with everyone, because this is very great information. I don't know what time the conference start tonight, but look, tell your friends they can miss this and come on in here with us and listen to this good information. They'll be back on time. I think Kamala speaks later. Lord, they be going so late. I be about to go to sleep. I'll be going to sleep. That'll be my downtime. I'll be like, I'm about to watch y'all on YouTube tomorrow. Y'all need to do this at 8:30 or something. But anyway, look, we have a awesome guest. I am so excited because I'm going to be learning with you all tonight, you all. Baby, when I got her bio, I was like, woo, 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 woo. she got it going on. Listen, tonight we have Miss Natasha Nelson, aka Supernova Mama, and she's gonna have to tell us about that name. She is a disability advocate, a certified positive discipline educator. I know y'all don't have a clue what that is. You're gonna learn tonight. A highly decorated veteran. I can relate to that since I was in the Air Force National Guard. She's a nonprofit founder and autistic mother to 2 autistic Black girls. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. Neurodivergent. It's a category. It's not a diagnosis. It's a lot of things that could be lumped in there. And I really started thinking about back in the day when you had, it's sad, but they relegated folks that they thought was different to the back of the house, And sadly, I repented in my salvation days for making fun at people. We were just stupid, ignorant.
Mm-hmm.
So come on in the room, Miss Beautiful. Come on. Let me get you up
Hello,
here beside
everyone.
me. Hello
Hi,
there.
everyone. Hi. Well, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
I am so happy to have you, because when I didn't get all the details of what you did when we first met, 2 years ago. But then
Yes.
police started breaking it down. I was like, wow, I gotta have her on. And we've been talking about it. And I was like, oh, police, we're gonna do it this day. Then it was like, no, sent you the wrong date. Let's do this one. And I thank God, like I said, ordained by God, which you will learn, y'all. Why it's ordained by God. And as I tell you all, if you don't want to hear about Jesus or God, no Bibles or hallelujahs or nothing, this ain't the show for you. But if you hang around,
Amen.
your spirit may be lifted. You may lift some of your heavy load, lose some of your heavy load. So, Miss
Mhm.
Natasha, welcome, welcome,
Thank you. Thank you for having
welcome.
me, Mama Jones. And I call her Mama Jones because I'm from Georgia and we don't play that mess. You give your elders their respect. So,
Hey, and look, you all, I'm representing, I'm embracing the elderly because as we see in this world, as my dad used to say, any
mhm,
day above the soil in your right mind, it's a blessing with
mhm,
all the things that's going on. So let's just
mhm,
jump right in.
mhm.
First, I want you to, Natasha, tell us about you. Just tell her who you are first.
Absolutely. So, first and foremost, I am a Black woman born and raised out of Georgia. But I have had my whole life disabilities. Some I did not even know about. And despite that, I went to Spelman for a semester, realized I could not afford Spelman, and joined the military to pay for Spelman. I joined the military. I served for 7 years. I did 2 tours in Afghanistan. I served and went all over the world. And then I decided to get out when I decided to have children because my husband is also in the military and both
Okay.
of us couldn't be in and have babies the way I wanted to have babies. So you know when you the first time you're a parent, you got all these ideas about everything you're gonna do and how you want to do it. And that was me. And so I wanted to stay home with my children until they were able to speak because I saw all these news stories about how
Yeah.
black babies were mistreated in daycares and mistreated in different places. So I told my husband, you want to have kids with me? We got to be able to afford for me to stay home with our kids until they're able to speak and advocate for themselves. And it's so funny that that was my rule because my oldest daughter, that was part of how we got her diagnosed. She wasn't speaking.
Okay.
So, so, but I decided I wanted to do all natural birth. I wanted to do all natural parenting, cloth diapers, breastfeeding, baby wearing. I had all the ideas that you have as a first time parent. And part of that was me staying at home with my daughter. It was me doing my own home Montessori curriculum with my daughter. And
Okay.
while I was doing that, I started seeing that when I call her name, other little kids, when you call their name or just when they hear their parents' voice, they look around, they looking for their mom. But my parents would be like, whatever, girl, you calling my name, whatever that mean. I don't know what that mean. And she would look. And and then I started noticing that when other little kids would come and play or we would take home play dates with other little kids, she did not care about those other little kids. She wanted to
Okay.
play with either other adults or she wanted to play with her own toys, but she wasn't interested in other little kids. And instead of pointing to something, our little kids point, I want that. My
Yeah.
daughter would take your hand, grab you, and take you to the thing she wants. She'd be like, come here, let me show you what I want. But she wasn't speaking. She wasn't speaking, and
Okay.
she was around 18 months. And my husband was still in the military, so we had a military doctor. And I told the military doctor, and they said, "Oh, just wait, just wait, just wait."
Yeah.
And
That's always the answer.
I was like, 18 months, all my research, everything I've looked at says she's supposed to at least be babbling or making something at this time. And when I grew up, my mom she came and helped me deliver. And and she just said, "Oh, that's a great baby. She always quiet. You don't never have to worry about her making no noise." It was a good thing that my child wasn't babbling and
Yeah.
screeching and crying all the time. That's a good baby. But we later realized that was because she was having sensory issues and she couldn't
Okay.
speak, and those things were happening. And so, as soon as I got to Atlanta, because my husband, once I got pregnant with my second child, my husband was like, the military is not going to let me spend time with my kids. They just going to keep sending me to deploy and all of
Yeah.
this.
That's
And
yeah.
I want to spend time with my kids and helping you. And so he decided to get out and we decided to come home to Georgia where I'm from. And as soon as I touched down here in Atlanta and got a pediatrician of color and told them my concerns, he validated my concerns immediately. And then he did a screening test, which is what your pediatrician can do, which is called an MCHAT-R screening test. And it's just them screening for any type of delays or any type of what we call neurodivergence.
Say that
And he
again
did
for me.
absolutely
M chat.
MCHAT-R. So it's a M and then a dash, and then
Okay.
chat is CHAT,
Hmm.
and then a dash and R. MChat R screening test. And he did that right in front of me as I was telling him my concerns. And then he validated me. He said, "You absolutely have a right to be concerned. Your child is showing on this screening, showing a very high chance that she could have some type of developmental disability, is what they call
Okay.
it, intellectual developmental disability." And so he referred me directly to the early intervention program. Now, why is that important? Every state has an early intervention program, and
Sure.
this program allows your child to get free, FREE, capital letters, free services to support your child if they're showing any delay. So if your child is struggling with speech, they may not have autism, they may just be struggling with speech. If they're 3 and younger, they can go to the early intervention program in their state and get free speech therapy until they're 3, right? If they're showing signs of having a physical disability and need physical therapy, they can be referred to the early intervention program. So that's why that's important. A lot of times doctors tell you to wait, wait, wait. Tell them no, 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 because I want them free services. Go ahead and refer me to the early intervention program. And if your child, maybe you get there and they evaluate your child and they say, "Oh, they're good, they don't need it." But at least you know,
At
right?
least you
So if you're
know.
exactly,
Yeah. And
so
you know what? Let's pause a minute. Let's
yeah,
dissect some of what you said.
absolutely.
So you made a decision you were going to be at home, which was, I said, that was God. Because
Yep,
had you been
yep.
still in the military or working, it may have been
I would
longer for you to
yep,
catch up on it. I
absolutely.
have a dear friend who has a son, has two sons that's actually
Hmm.
autistic. Her oldest son was not making milestones.
Yep,
And we worked together, and she was like, something's not wrong. She said, but my pediatrician keeps telling
yep,
me, oh, just wait,
yep.
wait, wait.
Hmm.
And me, I'm a little bit radical when I need
Yep,
to be, especially in terms when it comes to healthcare, because I know what disparities would do. And
yep.
she was in her office. I told her, I said, you pick up the phone right now. You
Yep.
call that pediatrician office. I said, this is what you're gonna say. Because this, for some reason, she had to get a referral. I said, you tell them, you would give me a referral immediately, or you will be faxing my child's medical records to someone
To
else
someone else.
and
Yep,
say, I will
that's
not
it.
tolerate you dismissing what I'm telling you about my child. And
Absolutely.
the child ended up getting intervention, and I can't think, the Bell Center, I think is what it's called here in
Mm.
Birmingham. They
Yep.
have the early intervention, but also, when you all been in the military, the advantage you probably had and her husband had, they were also able to pay for some services alongside that really benefit their child, which a
Mm.
lot of people don't have. And
Yep.
my goddaughter, dyslexic,
Hmm.
did not find out until she moved into the same school system with my children.
Yep.
And when they got there, thankfully, the school system we're in, they was like, wait a minute, why she don't have a computer coming from the other school that she was coming
Right.
from?
Hmm.
Why aren't they giving her test verbally?
Yep.
And
Hmm.
also, amazingly, when she got those interventions, even though she was in the ninth grade,
Hmm.
it was amazing how
Yep.
fast she caught up. I mean, it
Yep.
was just simply amazing what intervention and having the resources. And I also want to hone on y'all. Ain't nothing against white doctors, okay, or other doctors. But she said when she found her a doctor of color, it makes a
Mm-hmm.
difference. That's why representation matters. Being
Yep.
culturally sensitive matters. One thing
Mm-hmm.
in healthcare, I always tell people, you need to listen to your patient. I don't care
Yep.
what your personal biases are. I don't care if
Yep.
you think they lying. That ain't what you're there for. You are
Right.
there to assess it. So now you discover this for your
Yeah.
child, and she's nonverbal.
Right.
Okay, we
So
got to go
she's
to the mental
nonverbal.
health side. How did that
Yes.
affect you?
Oh, so this is where it becomes fun because there was two different reactions in our household. For me, it was like, oh, I have an answer. Okay, let's make a plan. And that was it. And for my husband, it was like grief for what he thought our daughter's life was gonna be and her
Oh,
having a disability, and there was a lot of stuff. And it actually we built it back, thank goodness, years in love, but it caused a bit of a rift in us because I was like, what's the problem? Like, okay, she got this. We can
Get
get
on
over it.
board. Let's get this
Yeah.
plan going.
And he was like, what's your problem? Like, you ain't have these dreams and ideas of what your child was going to be. And I was like, no, it's a human. I don't get to pick what it's going to be. It shows me. And those little pieces, and then start learning about autism as I'm caring for my daughter, made my daughter's pediatrician be like, you ever think about getting
Oh yeah. Look, you know what? You got to be all in because it was something you didn't know. It was
right,
something you didn't know anything about. So, when I
right,
looked up, the term neurodivergent is just really coming into the light for most people. You
yes,
knew of OCD, which it was
right,
OCD. We didn't know it was a neurodivergent thing. And I often
right.
think about Dustin Hoffman with Rain Man.
Yes. And a lot of people do that, but I have OCD. And my OCD is very different from his. It's very different from what you see on TV.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have OCD of cleanliness, but just think of it's obsessive compulsive behavior. So you obsess
Period.
about something and then you do a compulsive behavior to help alleviate your stress and anxiety that you have for that
Yeah.
obsession. So my obsession, especially when I was a kid, was Jesus Christ. I was in that church and I was obsessive about that church. My mom tells a story all the time about how I was outside yelling at her because she ain't go to church and how she was gonna go to hell when I was 4 years old. I was obsessive about what happens to us after life, about being a good person, about walking in Christ. And so
Yeah.
I thought I was going to be a young preacher. They'll tell you, my church, I was a part of the youth department, usher boy, choir, youth chairman, all of that stuff, National Baptist conventions. I was there.
Everything. Oh yes.
Everything. So I was compulsive about it. Morality, they call it morality OCD. And I still have parts of it, even with all my knowledge and training. I'll have a moment where I'll be like, well, that don't make any sense. Why would you do that? Because that's not going to help other people. That's not ethical. You're not helping the world. Why would you do that? And I have to remember,
Rein
everybody
it
don't
back
care
in.
about being right. Yeah,
Oh
right
yeah, and
into
hey, and we seeing that every day. Everybody look good is
it.
bad, bad is good. We just all
Yeah,
conflicted. And you know what?
yeah.
It's the same thing. Beliefs was like, Mama, you you made it, but you had some of that. You had some of that. And I think honestly, probably if you looked at every individual, there's
Yeah,
probably more than not of us
yeah.
have those tendencies. I know for me, and I'm sure she's had this conversation with you about take myself out. Oh, I came back. But anyway, he was different. And I said he was different, but it
Yeah.
wasn't so much to the point of like I thought he needed a intervention, but he was like that. He's still at 25.
Mhm.
It's like once he's had his stimulus of being around people, he's like, let me go to my place
Yep.
of safety,
Yep.
get back. And it was interesting. I was looking at some of the jobs, and I'm going, should I call this? I'm trying to put in here the disorders that I've looked. I guess I just call them neurodivergent disorders.
Neurodivergence. Yep,
Yeah.
neurodivergence. So
And
yeah,
so
and
I want to give people an
neurodivergence
idea.
can be anything from OCD, bipolar disorder, general anxiety disorder,
Yeah.
autism, ADHD, actual nonverbal learning disorders, what Chris Rock has, meaning he can't read facial expressions and like tone. He just takes the words you have and processes them. And that's a lot of people have that's also known as alexithymia. Hyperlexia is when a child teaches themselves to read before the age of 4, because the way that they learn is by chunks
Okay.
of words and language. So I was hyperlexic. My first words were a sentence, "What you got?" Because I was a real big fat girl on the farm who loved pork chop sandwiches. Uh, and so and so it's you learning chunks. And then as you get older, you start doing it with songs. So like my child who was nonverbal when she was diagnosed, she's now minimum speaking is what we call it. But a
Okay.
lot of her communication is through songs or like little what we call scripts. So she'll hear a TV show or a commercial, they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I like that. Give me that." And then she'll copy it in her head. And so the next time you ask her something, you're like, "Oh, Paris, do you want to go to the store?" She'll say, "Oh yeah, I like that. Give me that." Exactly how she heard it.
You know what you make me think of? Snoop Dogg gotta be neurodivergent. I'm thinking about
Yep,
rappers in general. I'm
yep.
just thinking about
So I have an
poets.
argument. I'm thinking about so I have an argument and people have laughed. So neurodivergence is your brain being wired differently.
Differently.
Anyone who is so compulsive in an art that they get famous and are able to make their art for the whole world, especially when they come from circumstances where they didn't have privileges to be in those spaces
Yeah,
and they made a way through from working hard, staying focused on it, ignoring hunger, ignoring other friends, ignoring other world society things. They probably a little
yeah.
neurodivergent
Probably our
because that's a part of
accountants,
it.
our actuaries, all of
Yeah.
those type of people. Look, probably most of our psychiatrists and psychologists.
So my best friend is a licensed therapist and she is neurodivergent and we joke about that all the time. She's like, it's kind of like people talk about you have to experience it to be able to help other people with it, right? So usually your therapist probably the most messed up person because
Yeah,
they gotta
that's what I'm
experience
sitting there
it to know
thinking
how to
about.
help
You
you.
think about I remember growing up, and it's kind of interesting now because this is the way people are
Mhm.
dressing, but we had someone in our community, and we called it, they dressed real eccentric, or they were
Yep,
elected, but they
yep,
were going to the beat of their own drum and they were just as happy. They really
yep,
didn't care what we thought about them. And now I see uh, people, look, it's the culture now. You think
yep.
of artists. I'm thinking about Leonardo da Vinci and all those people. They probably had some form of neurodiverse, whatever it was.
I tell people all the time, Van Gogh cut off his ear because his roommate's voice was irritating him to the point where he just couldn't take it anymore. He cut off his ear.
That's
That's
something.
neurodivergent.
Yeah,
the
that's
way
a high
the way
level
he
of it.
right, the way he painted those little bitty dots of different colors to make up a whole of. He said that's how
Yes.
he saw the world. That's
Edgar
neurodivergent.
Allan Poe. I'm sitting here
Yep.
thinking.
Oh yeah, my favorite.
Yeah, and look, Stephen King
hmm
and Steven Spielberg. I
Yep.
should say to come up with that
hmm
stuff, your mind has
hmm
to think in a different way. So
Yep.
listen, you all, if we did not have neurodivergent people, this world would probably be so boring.
A perfect example, Albert Einstein did not start speaking until he was 9 years old. In fact, before we started getting all this stuff about autism and ADHD and all the other things, when a child had delayed speech, they called it Einstein syndrome because
Okay.
Einstein didn't start speaking until he was 9. So a lot of people, when you start looking at the research, how they saw sensory, because that's one of the things that's affected by
Yeah.
neurodivergence, how you experience sensory, executive function, how you communicate, how you deal with social norms, and how what people want you to do and what people think. When we start looking at some of these people in our history, we're
Yeah.
like, oh, they might have been a little bit neurodivergent. So, absolutely.
Yeah, for real, for real, for real. So that's just amazing. And I was just sitting here thinking about. I have an uncle. He's deceased now, and
hmm
I used to always say, I said, y'all, my uncle is definitely an adult ADHD.
hmm
Most definitely. Out very gifted. Taught himself to
hmm
play the piano. He could draw. There was almost nothing that man could not do with his hands. So like I said, and even with Cameron, I was like, okay, yeah. And I know there's different, it's on the spectrum of everything. Like you have those that are quite obvious and those that go on and just, you would never know. You would
I
never
tell
know.
people all the time, autism is a spectrum. I have three autistic people in my house, including myself, and it looks very different on all three of us. The way I like to explain it to people is there are five things that autism affects. So, autism affects your sensory. So, your sight, your sound, your smell, your taste, and your touch, right? Those are the senses you know about, five senses. But you
Hmm.
also have internal senses. So, you
Okay.
have three internal senses. The first sense I want to teach you about is your interoception center. This is
Mm-hmm.
a center that tells you, hey, I have to pee. Hey, I'm thirsty. Hey, it's hot in here. My body is real hot. Hey, my heart is beating kind of fast. That sense is letting you know what's happening with your body, with your system. That's your interoception center. Then you have a sense of movement. So think about how some people can be go on a boat and they'll live on a boat, they'll be a pirate. And some people get seasick when they're on a boat. Or
Mm-hmm.
some people they love to drive fast and race their cars, and other people can get car sick. Same thing with roller coasters. Well, movement is a sense. And so we have a vestibular sense, and that's
Mm-hmm.
just our sense of movement and gravity here on Earth. And then our last sense is our sense of how we know we're like clumsy or how to do gross motor skills. You know, how sometimes autistic people will struggle with like tying their shoes or writing because of gross motor skills, grip, and things like that.
Okay.
Proprioception. So your proprioception center is what lets you control your body. So like your right hand versus your left hand, your
Gotcha.
right ankle versus your left ankle. So that's how you depth perception, clumsiness, being able to move your body, your form, all of those things, right? So the five senses you've always heard about, plus those three senses, internal senses, are
Mm-hmm.
all affected by autism, right? And they can be affected where you're what we call a sensory seeker, meaning you want more of all of those things. So you want more touch, you need more pressure,
Okay.
you want to move more, you want to ride on every roller coaster. You need more signal to tell you that you got to pee because you don't realize you have to pee until you about to pee on yourself. You don't realize that it's hot in here until you about to pass out and you need to sit down, right? So you want people to touch you, you want all the hugs, you want to squeeze them. You like pressure. Like that's a sensory seeker. But then you can be a sensory avoider. And so when you step outside, somebody brushes past your skin and you're like, hey, don't touch me. I don't like people touching me. Uh
Okay.
you come outside and the sun is shining and you're like, oh my God, that's something about to blind me out. I need shades. Somebody makes a noise near you and it may sound like the loudest thing in the world because you're what we call sensory sensitive to where it's overwhelming for you. And it's the same thing when you might have to pee every 5 seconds and they're like, why this person always got to pee?
Going to.
But your sensory in your body is telling you every time, hey, you got to pee, you got to pee.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
That's okay. Yeah. So let
So
me let me ask you about this
yes,
somatic symptom disorder, because
yes.
what is that?
So that one's fun because that's all the military's fault. And I would say the military plus my life. So what I would tell any parent is if you have a child who's neurodivergent and you don't know because you don't know, we don't know. My mama didn't know, right? We
Yeah.
didn't have all of this stuff. Um, but because of that, she really pushed into me to act more normal, be more normal, do more normal
Gotcha.
things, do like the other kids. And what tends to happen is you'll start ignoring your own pain or ignoring your own stress or ignoring your own fear to just do what the other kids are doing, to
Fit
be
in.
normal, to fit in. And what'll tend to happen is you'll start confusing stress and pain. You'll start confusing the two. And
Mm.
so there'll be times where you're so stressed out that you feel physical symptoms of pain. And then there'll be other times where you could be so stressed out that you don't realize you're feeling physical symptoms of pain and you could really hurt yourself.
Wow. Wow. That is
Yeah.
something. That is something. Let's shift gears a little bit because I want to dive a little more into neurodivergent. Well, as we know, the DNC convention is going on, okay? And last night, Vice President nominee Tim
Hmm.
Walz spoke, and we saw this young man who was in the crowd, very elated, very excited, was crying. And of course, me being in healthcare, I was like, yeah, something he has some type, I call them unique abilities. I wish they would
Yep.
change it from disabilities. Um, and when he came up on the stage, I mean, just the way, he loved on his dad and everything.
Hmm.
And of course, I'm actually looking up stuff today,
Hmm.
and his name pops up and says
Yep.
Tim Wal's son has brought neurodivergence to the
Yep,
forefront.
that's
Now,
right.
the sadness on that, you all, and y'all, let me put my disclaimer out here. I am apolitical, okay? I, I don't
Hmm.
like either party at the end of the day. When it comes to voting, I look at who is, I voted on both sides of the
Yep.
aisle. I voted for some independents. That's just how I roll.
Hmm.
But the callousness of some of these
Hmm.
people that were
Hmm.
making fun of him, and but I saw a clap back that the dad did. I'm gonna have to find it because it was the truth with them. I mean, it was Ann Coulter. I'll call her name. She said
Hmm.
something
Oh.
very inappropriate. And
Mm.
the clapback was Ann Coulter has been engaged 6 times and has yet to marry. The thing, but my thing was, how could you even with
That was a beautiful moment. I don't
it?
even know how you could find something negative from that.
I
I
mean,
don't.
really, it was really, but it goes back to that culture. And I don't. The governor
Hmm.
that spoke from Georgia, who's a Republican, who's supporting Kamala, and I
Hmm.
think he described it very well. He said this extreme MAGA GOP is not
Hmm.
my GOP, and I think even
Hmm.
within both parties, you got the extremes
Hmm.
of everybody, and that's why we're in all this chaos. So every time someone who's in power or in a position of power and
Hmm.
prestige, something like this come up. So I know when you saw that, you were like, whoop, whoop, this finna be taken up to the top now.
Oh, so I've already been work. So I when as soon as he was one of the options to be picked, I researched him, and so he
Okay.
was my pick for her VP option. And because I knew he had a disabled child, I also knew he was a veteran. I knew he was a teacher. I knew that he didn't have these nice cars and these $500,000 of investments and things. He is a American family man with two children. One is disabled, and I don't know if you know, but I took your daughter with me to DC this year because I spoke in Washington at the disability policy seminar.
Yeah.
Uh,
Hmm.
yeah, so I spoke directly with Senator Warnock and with Congresswoman Lucy McBath about exactly this, about being aware that disability policy and how we treat families and children with disabilities reflects all across that. So you can get people like Ann Coulter, and you can get people like some of our families who say things like they slow or they light bulb don't light all the way up because the culture of America allows it because you're not supporting these families, you're not supporting these children, you're not giving the education out there for the community to know. And so that's what I do. My nonprofit, I do advocacy in Georgia as on the Georgia Council of Developmental Disabilities.
Hmm.
And then I also move my butt every year to Washington to advocate with all of the congressmen. And if I ever can get in with that vice president, I'll bulldoze my way through there too.
Tell me
Um,
about it. And well, you look, hey, we're
Absolutely.
gonna work on getting you on some national uh, committee with that because I'm a big believer. You need people that are
Yeah.
affected by things to make
Yes.
decisions. Yeah, we know we got to have the policymakers and all that, but you need to talk to the people who are directly affected by it. I remember growing up, when I was growing up, they called the special needs kids in separate
Yeah.
learning
Yeah.
environments. And then we had the No Child Left Behind, which in itself was great.
Mm-hmm.
They did not, nobody need to be left behind, but it's difficult to teach them in the
Mm-hmm.
same environment. And I think what we have to realize, there are times when you need to be separate because you need something different. You
Yeah.
talked about the Montessori schools, which they teach
Mm-hmm.
kids based on
Their
where
abilities,
they
their
are.
learning stages. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a Montessori school here in Birmingham. They had it for years. The Brunos started it. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm an advocate. Even though I'm just like common sense is gone, okay? Because even when I was in school, teachers adapted their teaching style based on the
To the
children.
child. Yes.
It
The
wasn't
problem
everybody
is
keep
they're not
up.
allowed to do that anymore. They
Yes.
don't really have the opportunity to do that anymore. And
Yeah.
that's what the problem is. But you're absolutely right. A good teacher, loving teacher, They do. They just change up their model. They change up. They meet that child where they are. But when you got 30 kids, you not getting
Yeah.
a lunch. You ain't getting planning time or nothing. Teachers are getting overworked. They're
And you
getting
also,
tired.
what we had were teachers' aides in those
Yes,
classes.
that
Because
too.
I remember when in
Hmm.
our schools with our special needs kids, they assessed them, taught them things, and their goal
Yeah.
was, okay, how can we get them up to when they get out of school, they'll be able to work and have a job,
Hmm.
and be a
Yep.
productive citizen. And they did all of that based on their limited knowledge, of
Yep.
doing things.
Yep.
But also in my community, it was Black, Indian, Native American, the
Hmm.
Creek Indians, and of course white people had classism and all that stuff. But we
Hmm.
lived in a world then where I did have Black teachers, we did
Yep.
have Native American teachers, so I think that made
Hmm.
a difference, and that they were going to pour into those children
Yep.
simply because, like you said, once you showed up for the black with the Black pediatrician, it was like, yeah, 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 yeah.
Yep.
And I always tell
Absolutely.
people this: advocate for yourself. You know if something's wrong. And also, on the flip side of that, parents, you got to get off your phone. You got to get off TV and pay attention. Pay attention. God has blessed me with I call her my grandchild, that I keep while her mom's working night
Hmm.
shifts sometimes. And that's first, I'm paying attention to that. But honey, I told her, I said, she ain't got no deficit. She's still speck on the ground. I'm running around here now. She's 13 months. Wait a minute, stop. Where you going? But you got to pay attention
Yep.
to that type stuff. If you're so preoccupied, you're giving them the iPad and turn
Yep.
on YouTube all the time, you may never pick up on it until it's later. Now, talk
Mhm.
about delayed diagnosis, how detrimental that could be for that child.
So I'm a great example of that. So of course, I didn't get diagnosed until after my children got diagnosed, right? So I currently at 30, I'm 35 years old. I have high blood pressure. I have
Mm-hmm.
chronic bronchitis. My back has been fractured, not just like broken in half. Basically, I was doing so much on my back because remember, I confused stress and pain that I
Yeah.
didn't realize I was fracturing my back, and a piece of my back broke off from my muscles being so swollen from me
Mm.
overworking myself. So they call it a stress fracture. So I stress fractured my back. I I struggle very much with anxiety. So I have general anxiety and depression. So all of these and PTSD. And the final at first we thought PTSD was just from the military, but when we went through the full evaluation, the psychologist was very strong in saying the military exacerbated my PTSD, but I had PTSD from growing up and trying to be like everyone else, trying to be normal, forcing
Okay.
myself to
Yeah.
be normal, forcing myself to deal with things. And then, of course, I did grow up in poverty. So that didn't, that exacerbates things too. And so when your child does not get diagnosed, and you're thinking, "Oh, I don't want them labeled." First, I want to make sure you understand. I want you to look at me. You see all of those things that are by my name: veteran, certified positive discipline educator, many other
Yeah.
accolades. I was always the weird girl. It is now. the, so this whole I don't want them to be labeled. I promise you, I was the weird smart girl from kindergarten on. I went to gifted. They moved me to gifted in kindergarten because they realized I was a weird smart girl. And they said, "Oh, we need to test her." But when I was growing up in the 80s and the 90s, if you were smart, they didn't look at anything else, and I was smart. So they put me in gifted, and that kind of helped because it put me with other smart kids, and I was able to use my knowledge,
Yeah.
but I was
A
still
more
social.
challenging environment.
Exactly, but I was still socially awkward. I was still in school sucking my fingers up until like middle school. I was still in school eating paper. I was still doing sensory things that have to
Things.
do with autism. And I was still the weird smart girl. it didn't it black people got jokes and stuff about it. They be my brother siblings would be like, yeah, Tasha like a white girl, but she cool. Like they they had little sayings and stuff.
stuff.
But you're labeled.
Well, you
They
know what
know
you
your
made me think
child
about?
different.
I'm thinking about this. What about those? You know, you have those people that they're either tapping or they're shaking their legs. Could
That's
that
me. I don't. There's no. If you watch this interview, you have not saw me stop moving. A part of my body is always moving. Now I've gotten smart because again, I'm 35. I know what type of movement makes people uncomfortable and what type of movement people deal with. So now I know to tap my foot or to just move my toe if I need to move something. Or I got fake nails, so I can tap my nails. So I know the appropriate movements I can do that are socially acceptable now
thing?
at
Yeah,
35. But a child doesn't know that. And so they move, they flap their hands, or they jump, or they verbal stem because they haven't had those years of experience of realizing society can be mean and they don't accept these things,
yeah.
right?
Well,
And
one
that's
thing
the difference.
I did not like with Cameron. I didn't force him to go play if he didn't want
Mm-hmm.
to. You know,
Yep,
he was reading his books and doing his games, and just the
that was
fact,
me.
you know, I mean, he escalated with learning those games and everything, which he's
Yep,
getting paid. You know, that's his job now.
yep.
So hopefully you all now listen. Don't run out here diagnosing and labeling people,
No,
okay?
no.
Don't don't
Don't do
do
that.
that. This got to be a pattern, okay? Because you
Yes,
can have I call it situational things can make you have some of these symptoms as well. You know, we all can have a little OCD show up,
absolutely. And
anxiety.
what I like to tell people is think about it like this. You have activities of daily living that you do. You function. A person like me who is diagnosed with these things, autism, ADHD, if you need an actual diagnosis, that means that you are struggling to either do some of these things and function or you're
Hmm.
in distress in some type of way, meaning
Okay.
mentally or physically, you may be in distress. If a person isn't showing that they are in distress or that they're not able to function, then don't be going around diagnosing people telling them they got OCD. And
Yeah.
but if you see a parent who is in distress because their child can't stop moving, their child is always getting into something, always putting something in their mouth, and they're just like, I don't know what's going on. It might be okay to say, hey mom, have you
They
thought
wore
about
out. They
yeah,
wore out.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
because they
it
and
does.
y'all know what parents I'm talking about. Because I was that parent. I was like, she always jumping around. I don't know what to do,
Look, that your
and
mama
I
know like,
had to learn
where
what
she
to
at? Where that
do.
girl at? You
Yeah,
climbing on stuff.
climbing on everything, and that is sensory. It's what I told y'all. There's a movement sense, and so that child isn't getting enough signals to their brain for that sensory, and they're wanting more. So they're climbing, they're moving, they're jumping because they're wanting more of that movement
Hmm.
sensory. And I know that now. But when that child was 18 months and she was trying to climb my blinds, I didn't know that, and I didn't know what was happening.
Look,
And so
you
that
didn't
is
know you were raising you. You know
and
what?
that is exactly why I started my nonprofit because I
Profit.
was like, I said, first of all, parents, period, do not know what to do. But parents of color don't have any resources or support when it comes to, okay, I don't want to whoop this child. I don't want to yell at this child, but how can I support this child who won't sit down for 5 seconds or
Yeah.
who refuses to eat anything that isn't chicken nuggets? How do I parent this child? And so I wanted to have a resource to help those parents. And so that's why I created.
That's it. And you have an event coming up. It's virtual in October. So
Yes.
tell us about that. And you all, I dropped her website uh,
Excuse
in
me.
the chat, so you can go there. You can go there and get a plethora of knowledge in everything, and support this. So tell us when it's gonna be and the ways that people can support. Because you all, even if you don't think you have anybody in your family or you have a friend or somebody, you can donate to support this so that she can get
Yes.
parents that cannot afford to come on their own to get there.
So absolutely. So it is a parenting summit specifically for parents of color who have neurodivergent children. So autism, all those things we talked about. If you have a parent who you know is dealing with that, a lot of times it can feel very lonely. They don't feel like anybody else understands. They come and bring their kid to the cookout, and y'all know how the aunties do. And they tell her she don't know how to parent her child. If I had that child, they sit down and then they stop coming to the events and they're lonely and they don't have anybody who they feel like understands them. So one of the things we want to do is find you connections of other parents of color who are dealing with the same things you're dealing with, right? You need a network, you need a community, you need a village. And sometimes it's great to try to build that village where you are, but sometimes
Yeah.
that ain't gonna work. And maybe you need to branch out and find one online. That's all right. Right. The next thing we want to do is we want to get you education. So I have licensed, certified professionals such as licensed mental health counselors. I have school psychologists. I have sped teachers. I have self advocates outside of myself on all different levels there to teach, to educate, and discuss specifically parenting neurodivergent children of color. We have a panel of self advocates because I wanted all of my parents to see adults with disabilities. So we
Yeah.
have autistic young black male who's been to college and he went through a program specifically in Georgia that allows you to transition from high school and get ready for college and then support you through college.
That's
And he had
great.
dyslexia and ADHD. So he'll be there, nice little black, young black man. We have a black girl who has autism and she's non-speak. She doesn't speak. So she's going to be communicating with us through an AAC device
Mm.
completely to answer all of your
Now
questions.
tell us
And
what
she's going to be
tell
able
us
to
what an
come.
AAC device.
Absolutely. So, and that's a big thing you're going to learn at the conference. Sometimes autistic children just will not speak. Sometimes it's a delay. Sometimes it's not going to happen. And so, if that is the case, you need to find alternate and argumentative communication, AAC,
Okay.
alternative and argumentative communication. So, that could be anything from sign language or it could be pictures using, we have picture books. They call it a PEC system, but it's a picture book that you use to communicate with your child, or an AAC device, an alternative and argumentative communication device, which you can nowadays, it's 2024, you can get an iPad and get an app that'll put the AAC device on the iPad for
Gotcha.
the child. Yeah, but back in the day, you had to have a specific device, but it allows for your child to communicate with you through pictures. And build sentences to communicate with you because sometimes they never would do words. And there's different reasons for that. It could be an issue of sensory, because we talked about sensory already. Some children who have autism have sensory sensitivity so much to where it's hard for them to push words out of their mouth. It's hard for them to figure out all of the muscles. Think about what goes into talking. You got to know how to use your tongue, your teeth,
Yeah.
your mouth muscles, your jaws, your throat, your larynx. All of that works together to form words. And sometimes that's overwhelming to an autistic child, depending on where they fall on the spectrum. And so that's the reason they may not speak.
Yeah.
Then we also have auditory processing. Some of us, like I actually have a delay from hearing versus seeing words. When I'm seeing words, I can process very fast. But when I'm hearing words, there's a little bit of a delay for me. And for some autistic people, it's even worse. It's the so I always liken it. Black parents like say, if you can say "huh," you can hear, right? For some of us, I
Can't.
saying "huh" because we processing.
Yeah, like it ain't caught
So
up yet.
yeah, so I told my daughter, but you black, so you can't say "huh." You just say "excuse me" or "I'm sorry," and then that'll be okay. So we instead of "huh," we say "I'm sorry" or "excuse me," but we're still processing. So
Yeah.
yeah. So and then you also have children who have a language processing issue, meaning instead of them learning A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then learning A makes the I sound and T makes the T sound, and A plus T makes at, we learn words in chunks. And so we learn at the store before we learn at, or we learn uh, sit on down with me before we learn sit. And it's just how it is. They call it gestalt processing, and it's where you learn things in chunks better than you learn things individually. And it could be with numbers and with letters.
Anything.
So Yeah. And so both of those things. So that's why you have some children, parents will be like, my child didn't speak until they were 4, but then they were just speaking, they were just saying full sentences. Gestalt processor. They were learning in chunks and they were just not, they were just
And then
trying
once
to
it
get
open
it to
up, you're
all go
like,
together.
"Will you go somewhere and sit down
Yep.
somewhere and be quiet?"
Exactly.
And I'm sure you
Exactly.
followed the young man. I don't know where he lives. He's a NASCAR driver. He's
Yes.
autistic.
Yes.
And,
Mm-hmm.
the
Yes.
thing about it, everybody was like, "Well, how can I said, "You all, he ain't studying nothing else on that track. He's
Nope.
very focused.
Focus.
I'm doing this
Focus.
circle. I'm doing this circle." And that's what they were talking about. When you need repetitive stuff,
Yes.
I know one thing I love, at the hospital I work at, they actually hire, uh,
Yep.
young adults with disabilities and stuff like it's a young man,
Yep.
he's sweet as he can be, and, and he speaks, but you can tell it's very mechanical per se.
Yes.
But he
Mm-hmm.
knows, hey, how you doing? And he
Mm-hmm.
transport things. He have these departments he go
Yep.
back and forth to.
Yep.
He ended up getting an award. I think he won something from the governor because he's
Mm-hmm.
been working there so long. So they started this program for that. So we've discovered now so many people that sadly we discarded that
They
they
have an
have.
ability.
I tell y'all somebody else, even though he's blind, Stevie Wonder,
Yep. He's def
Ray
the way
Charles,
he see the way he talks about music, the way Ray Charles and Stevie Wonder talk about music and the visuality of seeing it, that's a neurodivergence. Being
yeah,
able to see music is a neurodivergence not everyone has. But
Prince, Michael
Mozart,
Jackson,
Prince, yep, they were able to see Beyonce, when you see her singing and she's doing that thing with her fingers, they can see music in colors. That's a neurodivergence. Not
yeah.
everybody can do
And
that.
you all, just from the sheer way when they talked about, we call it commitment and dedication. Yeah, we now know that had Michael Jackson probably been diagnosed and got some help, he will
Hmm.
still be here. He wouldn't start
Hmm.
medicating because that will happen. You will start
Hmm.
doing other extremes. And we used to be like, oh, they talk about how he practiced all that time.
Prince too,
That was
because then
not
he died
normal.
because, yep, same thing
Yeah.
with Prince.
People will
Yep, that
start
over.
self-medicating
And it's
because
exactly what I talked about with also not realizing stress and pain and hurting
yeah.
yourself because you don't realize what you're doing to your body. Same thing,
Yeah,
both
you
for
need to
both of
not
them.
realizing not getting rest is not good.
Yep,
Not
exactly.
realizing that practicing 18 hours out of a 24-hour day is really doing damage to your body. And you know what I laughed at when me and Felice was talking? She was talking to a person who I'm gonna leave nameless, uh, asking them to sponsor, right? And it's like,
Hmm.
let me read it and look at it because I ain't sure about neurodivergent, what it's like. So she asked him, were you in the gifted class? He's like, oh yeah,
Hmm.
you it.
You're neurodivergent.
You're
Yes,
and we didn't realize it. Gifted was a badge of honor
but it's
because it was like they
neurodivergent.
smart. It was just like they super smart. Did not
But
realize that later on they would probably have issues with just blending into society.
I tell parents all the time when you look at the paperwork, my mom was laughing because she still had the paperwork when they decided to send me the gifted and when they said I was accepted in the gifted. I
Uh-huh.
said, it doesn't say she's smart, it says she thinks and problem solves differently than the other
Yeah.
children. Because if you're gifted, you're thinking outside the box. So you
Yeah.
are smart, but you're thinking outside the box on how to get those answers that they're asking you. Because gifted is very simple. The gifted program and the evaluation process
Hmm.
is the same as the special education department process. They evaluate you, they do different tests with you, and then they decide what type of support and what type of program you're going to be in. It's just they that you have intelligence, and with the SPED program, it's a lot about focusing on not have what they call intellectual developmental disabilities, but that can also be a problem. So, for example, my daughter Paris, the one who's minimum speaking, she's reading
Okay.
chapter books. She's 6. She's reading chapter books. She's doing multiplication and division and math. She's doing puzzles. She's loading dominoes and setting up different, like a whole like city, and then using balls and stuff to knock the dominoes down and then doing physics. But if you say, "Hey, Paris, how are you doing today?" She's gonna look at you like, "Why are you talking to me?" if you if you give her food, she's gonna play with it because she likes the sensory before she starts to eat it,
Eat it.
right? If she if you tell her to sit down, if you don't have a chair that allows her to move and spin around, she won't sit down. She can't sit down and she'll jump in. So what we found was her what they call behavior issues were more on a kindergarten or pre-K level, but her
Yeah.
intelligence was on a third grade level. And so they didn't know what to do with her. So we ended up having to put her in autism school specifically for autism because the public school system was like, we don't know what to do with your child.
Yeah, and it's great now that they are learning more. I know a friend of mine, her son, a very hyperactive, so hyperactive. So she
Mhm,
was like, I can't put my child in public school because they're gonna label
mhm,
him. So she opted to homeschool both her children. With this year, daughter going to ninth grade, and he's going to middle school. I think middle
mhm.
school. He said, "Oh, I want to go," because big sister's
Right,
going.
right. He want to go
I-
to the
And
regular
I always say,
school, right?
y'all, God always work it out for his children. Okay. Now, God take care of
Hmm.
rain on the just and the unjust, but I'm talking about specifically for
Hmm.
his children. She was at a function, and the principal of the school that
Hmm.
her son is gonna be attending was she got to meet him, and she was like, "Hey, my son is gonna be there, and this and this and this, and I'm concerned about it." He said, "Oh no, we got special training for that. We know exactly
Yeah,
what to do with him." But you know what I thought
exactly.
about? I thought about when we were growing up.
That was
I,
not the case.
well, no, I guess for me though, no, our neurodivergent teacher was like, "Get up here and do something." They gave you something to do. I
Yeah.
was an avid reader. I was like, okay, was I neurodivergent? And I was always a person that helped other people learn how to read because I was reading
Hmm.
well. And when you
Yep.
start saying them chapter books, I could stay in my room reading.
My mom tells a story about me falling in a ditch and the neighborhood. He was a neighborhood drug dealer, but they used to look out for me for my mom when I walk home from school. He had to pull me out of the ditch because I was walking home from the bus and reading
Reading the
and
book.
fell in the ditch.
And I just well, look, after I got these children up out of here, I resumed reading. But I was thinking about like, I could read pretty fluently by the time I was 3 years old.
Yep, yep, hyperlexic. Yep, that's exactly
And
what that.
I think about something, even when it comes to the scripture, I would be asking my dad, who was a pastor, like, "Dad, you ever consider this?" And one of the things I shared with him, they was talking about, you know, Eve got cursed with
Yep,
child pain.
yep.
I said, "Dad, I said, why y'all don't think she had children before that? Because what would it matter
Mhm,
if it hurt when she
mhm,
had the first child?" I
mhm.
believe they had children before. So now they say your toes gonna curl when you deliver this next baby because you've been hard headed. My dad was looking at me like, only you would think of something like that. And I have a friend will say to me, "Hey, you come up with some weird stuff. Ain't nobody even
Listen,
thinking about that."
my grandma tells the story all the time. So my grandma was a Jehovah's Witness, and I had went to a Baptist church that was in my neighborhood, and I very much loved that Baptist church. So me and I went to see my grandma. Mind you, I was like 5 years old. My grandma died when I was 6, and she said she used to have she's Jehovah's Witness. They read their Bible now, so she had me sitting down reading their Bible, and I said, Grandma, if only 144,000 people gonna go to this heaven. Don't you think there was already 104,000 before you? So why we working so hard? Because I don't think me and you gonna get to go there.
You probably say, "Gal, shut your mouth."
She was so mad at me.
Yeah, like make it make sense, grandma. Make it make sense. Well, look, Natasha, this has been wonderful. This has been wonderful. I am just so happy that you have started this nonprofit and you have, I mean, you really advocated. And not only did you advocate, you went out there and said, let me learn about this so I can teach other
Yes,
people. And that's what it's about, you all. It's not about just your child getting the help that
yes,
they need, but being an advocate and fighting for those that don't have options, don't have
yes,
option. You go to that post-traumatic stress syndrome, just the blight
yes,
and the abject poverty that some of our race
yes,
live in. and culture,
Yes.
that would make you become neurodivergent just trying to
I was
cope
just
in
gonna
life.
say. So the signs for PTSD for children who are dealing with poverty or dealing with PTSD, they look very similar to autism, to the point where when my psychologist was diagnosing me, he ended up bringing my mom in. He ended up talking to some of my aunts because he said he wanted to make sure that some of the signs that I was showing were before I had my trauma and the poverty when I was
Everything.
younger, because it looks very similar. A lot of the issues that you have, not being able to control your emotions, having memory fogs,
Yeah.
all of those things, they're very similar. And so, absolutely, a lot of these children, especially children of color in poverty, are dealing with PTSD, and it ain't even autism. But either way, they need help and support.
Yeah. And you all know, the thing about this is that pretty much whatever going on in your life, medical,
Hmm.
mentally, physically, you need to start at childhood.
Hmm.
Walk it up from there.
Walk it
Because
up.
even
Hmm.
though it may have really manifested, there's a root cause that we miss a lot. So look, I have really
Absolutely.
enjoyed. Let me do this advertisement before we log off. Look, you all, this is my trainer here. Her name is Doella Thomas. She's gonna be starting a class down at the Boutwell. I think it's September the 1st when it starts. And she's gonna be focusing on stretching and agility. Trust me, at 58 years old, you young folks keep stretching, keep doing it all your life.
Yes,
Because when you got to
all
get
your
it
life.
back when you get this age, it is rough. She also does personal training. She will come to you if you're within a certain mile radius of Birmingham, or she will do it virtual. She will work you out. Some of you have seen some of my posts I put on Facebook when she come over on Wednesdays and abuse me. I mean, really train me.
I
But
love it.
I'm down almost 50 pounds and I'm toning, I'm doing weights. And
Ooh,
you all, we got to be physically healthy to do all the other work. You can't be spiritually healthy if you're not physically healthy. You
and
can't be
mentally healthy.
spiritually and
Yep.
physically healthy if you're not mentally healthy. I tell people like Father,
Amen.
Son, and Holy Ghost, spirit, body, and soul. All of that stuff go
Amen.
together. So we got to start working on holistic health rather than just focusing on one thing. So thank you all for joining. Thank you for coming on, Natasha.
Of
Have you
course. Thank you for having me.
and everything. So I can't wait to see you again in person. Another daughter, y'all. Y'all, I got a bunch of daughters now. A bunch of
That's
daughters.
right.
Yeah. So
Absolutely. And if you can join us for October 13th, it is a fully virtual conference. Fully virtual conference. Join us October 12th and 13th. And you know what? We're also going to have amazing, everyone's going to be there that's going to give workshops. We're going to have panels
mhm.
and we'll have live interviews. And you're just going to get professional, personal, and self information connection from people who are dealing with different types of intellectual disabilities and neurodivergence, who also have education and resources to help you. And that's
Okay.
what it's all about in this. Absolutely. And if you can't come, think about sponsoring a family. We have the option on that website to sponsor a family. We're hoping to sponsor at least 100 families who cannot afford to pay themselves. And if you click on it and you notice, I am very big on things being accessible to everyone. So you get to pick your price and you got an option to split that price up if you need to. So come on and through and see us and get some information and learn how to consciously parent your neurodivergent children. I'd love to have you.
Now look, let the mama come in. Don't pick the cheap way out when you can do better. Okay, see, we got to learn to take care of others,
That's right.
sowing
That's right.
on good ground. Don't order Amazon. Don't buy that cappuccino. It ain't even a sacrifice.
Mhm.
Just don't do it. I'm gonna say this about our community. It's gonna take us to save us.
Amen.
Yes, do we need to fight for some things that's going on in this world that are unjust? But
Yes.
we also need to work within our communities
Mhm.
ourselves to
Mhm.
address the issues that we have and become mentors. Start lifting these children up with all the stressors that they have. They are not living in the same world that we grew up in under no circumstances. Under no circumstances. So don't even compare your childhood to this childhood going on now. Whole
You
different
ain't have
world.
computers in your school. You ain't have to know every bit of information at all
Yeah.
times.
And you got to go outside. We had recess, morning, lunch. And I think
We
sometimes,
had the bowling alley, we had the skating rink,
yeah,
we had the mall, we had the rec center, we had boys and girls club.
we
They
got
ain't got
out.
nothing.
They just locked in like prisoners. Like prisoners. Yeah. So that's it. Well, you all have a good night. Now, next week, I'm going to be off because me and my boo, my husband, y'all.
Mr.
Make sure I make clear.
Jones.
Yeah, we are going on us a little getaway. It's time to get away. But now the next week, I can't remember the date, September, the first Thursday in September, we're gonna have Pastor Jenkins. He's a comedian. So we're gonna get some laughter going on up in here. So you all have a good night. Be safe. Look, y'all can go and watch the get ready to see hear Kamala speak tonight. Vote based on what you want to see in America. And that's going to be determined by the condition of your heart.
Yep, absolutely.
Most definitely. So good night. Hang on.